Aroma Home has been trading for about 18 years in the UK, and we supply major retailers around the world, as well as independents throughout Europe. So we have good experience in supplying the big guys and the little guys. And we had an opportunity in 2007 to take our company to the US. I was approached by someone who wanted to take it over there. And so it was a bit of a leap of faith, and we went over there. It was a huge learning curve. It's a huge amount of difference between the way you operate in the US to the way you operate in the UK. The fact they speak English is about the only similarity to it all. I'm, by qualification, a chartered certified accountant, so I come with a business background, and you'd have thought it might have been a bit easier for me, but it absolutely wasn't. But it is doable, and there's a huge market over there, 350 million people over there, 60 million people over here. You see the possibility. And they have a great propensity to buy and gift. They have Thanksgiving, Cyber Monday, Black Friday, Christmas, and they seem to buy into gift a little bit stronger than we do over here. So if you've got a good line, a good brand, there's a possibility of getting it over there. I think the first thing to say is that if you are going over there, you can do it. You can do it from the UK, but I've seen people try it. I'm not sure it works. I can only explain from my understanding of it and how I found it. That if you try and distribute into the US from the UK, you're going to hit a lot of problems. First, there's time differences. So you're working, even if it's East Coast, you're working 5 or 6 hours out there. If you go to the West Coast, you're 11 hours out. So if you want to work 24 hours a day, you could probably cover it. I think there's a little bit of a barrier between US companies buying from UK companies who are shipping from the UK, because there's a time involved, there's damages. It happens, they do it. But I just think they're more comfortable, as you'd imagine a UK retailer would be, in being able to order something that you can access from the territory that you're working in. So our products are basically a well-being gift products, novelty gift. We do quite a lot of heatable products, so warming products you put around your neck and microwave. So it's pretty important for us to be able to manufacture in the US, at least have a warehouse. So as I say, we kind of got driven to open up properly over there, which meant we had a base, we had a warehouse, we had a small manufacturing base, we had a sales team. And the first thing that I'd definitely highlight is, and it wasn't apparent to me when I started, that if you're going to do it and you actually make the effort to go over there, if you're going to have an office or warehouse, however small you do it, make sure you do it geographically in a commercial place. The guy who I worked with initially was based in San Francisco, and it transpired that San Francisco is the most expensive area in the US to have an office, employ staff, or warehouse. So I don't think I'd start there again if I had my choice. And obviously New York and San Francisco are about the worst two places for that. You're not going to want to set up in the back end of Texas, because you're not going to get any staff. But somewhere in the middle, I'm sure there's good possibilities for a cost efficient setup. We found that being West Coast or East Coast was to advantage primarily because of the shipping difficulties over there. It's such a massive country. If you set up in the Midwest, you're going to have to ship. Not only are you going to have to ship your product in, but you're then going to have to ship it overland. Huge amount of cost, extra time. So I would definitely recommend keeping within a sort of access to the East Coast or the West Coast ports, just in terms of a time base. We did have our own warehouse, and we've run that pretty consistently since 2007. But there are a number of very well set up US distribution companies all down the east and west coast. They're not cheap, but they do a great job, and they understand the shipping in the US. And if you're going to take it on and you're shipping a finished product into the US, you might want to find one of these warehouses who can actually facilitate and distribute your product for you. They know all the shipping issues. We didn't do that. We did it ourselves. It was, again, a big learning curve for us, but it's a shorter cut to it. Talking about the differences between the US and the UK or Europe, the biggest difference is that you're not going to be able to sell to the whole of the US. It's physically impossible. You can't have a team of agents as you can have in the UK or Europe. So you're going to have to either do this through a distributor or through rep groups, or effectively agent groups. So they're as you can imagine, you've got an agent over here. Well, they don't have one agent. They'd have a group of agents covering a territory. So you might have 15 agents covering Colorado or California, and you'd work through those. The problem with distributing into the US, we found, and say this is my personal, everyone might have done it or had a go at it and have a different experience, but my understanding of it is that selling into the US, and the biggest problem with it is that this isn't pound for $1.55. It doesn't work like that, not as far as I'm aware. So if you've got a product that sells for £10, you're not going to get $15.55 for it in the US, certainly in our sector. So something that we would sell for £10, would retail for £10 in the UK, we would expect to retail for $12, $13, maybe even $10 in the US. So you're going from about 1.1 to 1.2 in terms of what the US public will expect to pay for their gift. And on the basis, obviously, the world's a small place. There's a lot of companies replicating what we do over there, so they can buy something similar, no doubt, for the price they want to pay. So what happens is when you want to distribute into the US, it's a big problem because the distributor wants his 30 or 40%, and because they're going to retail it at so much less, we felt that every time we've looked at distribution, the margin's taken out of it for us because the retailer just won't buy it at a price, or the consumer won't buy it at a price that makes it a commercial and viable proposition. So the only way you can really do it, and the most successful way to do it, is to do it through these agent groups. Now, it's definitely a buyer's market over there as regards those sort of groups. If you've got a good product and you can persuade buying groups in the US to range your product, you can effectively sell from one side of the US to the other through maybe 8 or 10 agencies, and they cover the whole territory for you. You'll never do it any other way. The only way you're going to get to those guys is to present to them, and the way we did it was that we exhibited at the two major shows in the US, which were Atlanta and New York. And New York's very similar to this. Atlanta, you have all the major agencies distributing there. They all have fixed showrooms there, and if you exhibit at Atlanta, you have the opportunity to be picked up by an agent or present to an agent who may be interested in your product. But I think, again, from my experience, if you can't get major agencies to carry your product, you're going to have a big problem in actually getting the product around the country. It's just no other way of doing it. I think the major difference is the price point, and it's just if you just think you're going to multiply it by the currency exchange, it's not like that at all. So those probably are the major differences. Other problems we had were that importing into the US is difficult. The whole compliance issue in the US is a nightmare. You get there in the end, but if you think you've got 3 forms to fill in the UK, you've got 30 forms to fill in the US. So what we did very successfully for us was we always imported through a customs broker. Now, you wouldn't have to do that. If you're say you're manufacturing in Asia, it's easy. You import the product into the UK through a shipping company. You get it shipped to your warehouse from the UK port, no problem. But in the US, it's so fraught with problems. You're best off going through a customs broker, and he will deal with all the duty issues you've got and the issues you've got at port. You wouldn't be able to unravel them yourself. And there's probably companies that have been there 10, 15 years still struggle with it. So we put a customs broker in between our shipper and us, and they deflect all the issues. And it's a cost, but it's a very valuable service because it is an issue. They have huge anti-dumping legislation. They can pull product. They can pull a container off for no good reason, hold it for 2 weeks, search it, let it go, and give you a bill for $5,000. You have to pay it, otherwise you don't get your product. Again, you don't have that. We don't. I mean, we haven't experienced it over here at all. So it's a difficult thing importing your product into the US. As far as the retailers are concerned, the independents are pretty much similar to the ones over here. Other than there's what they call them, there's more mums and pup stores. So there's a lot of small stores, thousands of them. So without having an office over there, the collection becomes an issue. Because obviously you've got to chase your money and you've got to send out your statements and whatever. So it's another good reason. But even if you're not warehousing over there, having a setup over there with an office helps you manage your business. Dealing with a major and the other point on that is on margin, they don't have VAT. And basically the consumer pays a tax over there. So it's not like over here where you have to mark up 2.4, 2.5, 2.6 times to give the retailer the margin and the VAT. Over there, they only want 2 times and they pay the shipping. So it's a big difference there. Here we pay the shipping and we have to add the VAT. There it's 2 times is good enough for an independent generally, and they pay the shipping, which is a great bonus because the shipping, if you're shipping from the east to the west coast, it can be 12% the value of the order. So you wouldn't want to be adding that on. We don't have that cost over here because we're just not shipping the same distance. So that's a major change when you're dealing with independents. When you're dealing with major accounts, it's fraught with problems. That's the big carrot that's out there. These guys have got 1,500 stores, some of them. So if you can get in, the unit sales can be massive. So one, you've got to be able to deal with that. Don't even bother pitching to a major retailer or looking for an agent to pitch to a major retailer unless you have the capacity to supply. And it's big volume. Big volume, as you'd expect. Margin is squeezed, no different really to the UK or anywhere in the world. The biggest issue really with the US is that they invented the word chargeback. So you've only got to put a label on the wrong side of a box and it's a chargeback. They're looking for chargebacks. I think most US major retailers make more money from charging you. You think you've done the deal, you're shipping your product in, you know what your margin is, but it never ever works like that. So you need to account for the fact that you're going to get a hit somewhere along the line with a chargeback for something, because that's a very, very lucrative revenue stream for your US retailers. But it is a fantastic business if you get it. We've supplied probably about 12 major retailers. It's complicated. They all work on an EDI system, so you've got to be prepared. You've got to have someone very computer numerate to be able to work with their systems. They load their POs onto it's all electronically run, so they load their POs onto it. There's no paper. They're not sending you orders through, and you've got to be able to ship. You might ship to their DC, but all the orders have got to be. So you might get 1,500 orders, and you've got to be able to package it and ship it to maybe one location, but your fulfillment chain has got to be excellent, and that's where these guys come in on the west and the east coast. They know what they're doing. Most of them have the experience. So quite a few of them, you just ship your product to them, and you say you're going to supply Dillard's or Macy's or someone, and they will know how to do that. And as long as they can access the orders, they'll deal with all the labelling. But again, you've got a budget for it. It's a specialist job. So those are the major issues dealing really with between the independents and the major accounts. When we went over there, we looked at 3 possibilities because it was a major commitment for us. And I would suggest, from my experience, I wouldn't be doing it half-heartedly. If you're going to go to the US, you've got to invest into it. You can't dip your toe in the water, ship from the UK. Well, you can start like that, absolutely, but to make a success of it, you've actually got to. It's a commitment. So when we looked at it, we thought, how are we going to structure it? How are we going to structure it to secure our business? And obviously, you can run it out of a UK company, not a problem, or you can set up a US company. The advantage of keeping it in the UK is that our tax rates are much lower than theirs. So there's a good reason to not set up a US company. And the biggest reason to set up a US company, as far as we were concerned, was that they're so they're likely to sue you for anything. So you could drop a paperweight, you sell them, someone buys up your paperweight in a shop, drops it on their foot, breaks their toe, and you could well get sued for it. It sounds ridiculous, but it could well happen. So the way we looked at it was that we set up a US company because we wanted to ring fence our UK company, and if there were any issues at all. Having said that, our products are heatable, so obviously there's more chance of a problem. We didn't want it to affect our UK company, and also when you insure your product in the US, it's more complicated. Generally, the major accounts will want their name on your insurance policy. Well, your UK company won't be able to do that, so you have to have a separate insurance to take into account the requirements of a key account in the US. So for several reasons, although tax-wise it wasn't efficient, it suited us to set up a US company. Everyone's going to be different. You take advice. If you're going to go down the US route, there's various ways of doing it. We set up Inc., but there's other LLPs and various other options. But it depends how your UK structure is set up and what you're trying to achieve. I think advice from a US accountant is very important. There are US accountants in the UK who can advise you. I'm an accountant, so I know. I felt that the UK practices that I know didn't have the expertise to give me the right advice, so I actually worked with an accountant in San Francisco, and a lot of this needs to be done prior to really getting going, because if you set up in the wrong structure, you're at risk from day one, and it just makes it more difficult to change it. So there's quite a lot of legwork to do to set up there. I think the first port of call is to figure out whether you've got a product which can sell in that marketplace. And to do that, you need to take it to New York and Atlanta, and you need to get it into some showrooms. If you can't get a showroom in Atlanta to range your product, then I would suggest you're going to struggle. So I think that would be, if I was doing it again, I mean, we were lucky. We got picked up pretty quickly by some agencies. But if I was starting again, that would be the first thing I'd do. And Atlanta would probably be the place I go. So that's kind of, I don't know how I'm doing for time here. That's kind of an overview. I've got 20 minutes. Was it 12, 10? Okay. That's kind of an overview of what you've got to consider. And all I'd say is it's a big commitment. The benefits are fantastic, but it's a step-by-step process, and you need to get the right advice before you make that investment. But you will struggle to do it ad hoc, just on the internet or something. And that was my experience of it.